Have you ever looked at someone else's life and quietly asked, why them, not me? Why do their paths seem smoother? Their blessings arrive sooner. Their smiles look lighter, while your own journey feels slow and heavy. The Buddha gently reminds us that comparison is a hidden source of suffering. Each life unfolds through its own causes and conditions, shaped long before this moment. When we measure ourselves against others, we unknowingly step away from our own path. As the Buddha taught, all beings are owners of their karma, heirs to their karma. Tonight, let us return softly, honestly, to our own unique journey. The Buddha never taught that suffering comes from lacking something. He taught that suffering is born from craving, the craving to be different, to have more, to arrive sooner than our own path allows. Comparison is a quiet form of craving. When we compare our lives to others, we are not simply observing differences. We are unconsciously judging our own worth based on someone else's timeline. We tell ourselves stories like, I should be further by now. They are ahead of me. Something must be wrong with my life. These thoughts may seem small, but they quietly disturb the mind, like ripples that never settle. In Buddhist teaching, this suffering arises from tanha thirst or grasping. The mind reaches outward and says, I want what they have. But the Buddha reminds us that no two lives are shaped by the same causes and conditions. In the Upajjhatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught, all beings are owners of their actions, heirs of their actions. Their actions are the womb from which they are born. This teaching gently points to a profound truth. What you see on the surface of another person's life is only the result of countless unseen causes, past intentions, choices, habits, and circumstances. Some from this life, some from before. When you compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10, suffering is inevitable. There is a well-known story in Buddhist tradition about a monk who grew discouraged because younger monks seemed to progress faster in their practice. They memorized sutras quickly, received praise, and appeared calm and joyful. Meanwhile, his own mind felt restless and slow. One day, he brought his frustration to the Buddha. The Buddha did not scold him. He asked gently, do you know how long each of them has been walking this path? Then the Buddha explained that some monks had practiced mindfulness and compassion over many lifetimes. Their progress was not sudden, it was ripened. The monk realized that what he saw was not favoritism or injustice, but karma coming to fruition. This is why the Buddha never encouraged comparison. He encouraged right understanding. Comparison blinds us to our own ripening process. It makes us impatient with our own unfolding. Instead of nurturing the seeds already planted within us, we look over the fence and doubt our soil. The Buddha taught that each person's journey unfolds according to dependent origination, a web of causes and conditions unique to that being. Just as no two leaves grow with the same shape, no two lives mature at the same pace. In the Dhammapada, it is written, no one can walk the path for you. You must walk it yourself. This is not a burden, it is a liberation. When we stop comparing, we reclaim our energy. We no longer waste attention measuring distances that were never meant to be equal. Instead, we begin to ask a gentler question. What is my next right step? The Buddha never asked his disciples to be like one another. He asked them to be aware of their breath, aware of their intentions, aware of the suffering that arises when the mind resists its own journey. When comparison arises, the practice is not to judge it, but to notice it, to see how it tightens the chest, speeds the mind, and steals peace. In noticing, we create space. In space, wisdom can speak. And wisdom whispers this truth. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where your causes have brought you. One of the Buddha's most liberating teachings is this: nothing in life happens randomly, and nothing unfolds by mistake. In Buddhism, this truth is called dependent origination, the understanding that every experience arises from specific causes and conditions. When we truly see this, comparison begins to lose its power over us. Your life is not late. It is not early. It is unfolding according to the conditions that shaped it. The Buddha taught that even two people born on the same day, in the same place, can walk entirely different paths. Why? Because the unseen causes intentions, habits, and choices are not the same. Some seeds were planted long ago. Some are being planted right now. This is why comparing outcomes without understanding conditions always leads to suffering. There is a simple Buddhist story about two farmers living side by side. One farmer's crops grew tall and green. The other's field struggled. People praised the first and pitied the second. But the Buddha explained that the land, the water source, the seeds, and even the timing of the rain were different. Judging the harvest without seeing the conditions was ignorance. So it is with our lives. When we compare our progress to someone else's success, we forget to ask, what seeds were planted in their past? What storms did they endure that we never saw? What support did they receive, or what burdens did they carry silently? The Buddha never asked us to envy results. He asked us to tend to causes. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. This teaching invites a profound shift. Instead of asking, why am I not there yet? We ask, what conditions am I cultivating today? This question is empowering. It returns responsibility to where it belongs within our present actions, not someone else's past. Many people suffer because they believe life is unfair. But the Buddha offered a gentler truth. Life is lawful, even when it is painful. Nothing is wasted. No effort is unseen. There is a quiet story told in the Zen tradition about a woman who envied her friend's peaceful life. The friend married well, lived comfortably, and seemed protected from hardship. The woman felt bitter and small by comparison. Years later, She learned that her friend had spent many sleepless nights caring for a sick parent, practicing patience and compassion daily. The peaceful life she admired was not luck, it was cultivated. This is why the Buddha taught that karma is intention. What shapes our future is not comparison, but what we repeatedly choose with our body, speech, and mind. The danger of comparison is that it makes us abandon our own work. We stop watering our seeds because we are busy counting someone else's fruit. The Buddha's path invites us back again and again to simplicity. What am I doing right now? Is it rooted in kindness, clarity, and wisdom? When we accept that each person has their own karmic timetable, something softens inside us. The tightness in the chest loosens. The need to rush fades. We realize that walking slowly with awareness is better than running blindly towards someone else's destination. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." That word is acceptance, not resignation, but understanding. Acceptance that our path is not wrong simply because it is different. When we stop measuring our lives against others, we finally have the space to live them. Understanding that each life has its own conditions is wisdom. Learning how to live that understanding every day is practice. The Buddha never asked us to force the mind to stop comparing. He taught us to see comparison clearly, with gentleness and awareness. What we see clearly begins to loosen its grip. The first practice is mindful recognition. When comparison arises when you scroll, observe, or listen, pause and name it silently. This is comparison. Not "I am bad for comparing," but simply noticing what is happening. The Buddha taught that suffering grows when we identify with our thoughts. Freedom begins when we see thoughts as passing conditions, not truths. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught mindfulness as observing mind states as mind states, not as self. This simple shift is powerful. Comparison loses authority the moment it is seen rather than believed. The second practice is returning to the body and breath. Comparison lives in the imagined future and the remembered past. The breath lives only now. Each time the mind measures itself against another, gently guide attention back to the breath. Feel the body sitting. Feel the ground beneath you. This anchors the mind where peace is possible. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." When we compare, we seek peace from outcomes, approval, status, achievement. The Buddha invites us to experience peace as a present moment capacity. The third practice is cultivating appreciative joy, mudita. Mudita is the ability to feel happiness for the happiness of others. It is one of the 4 immeasurables taught by the Buddha. Comparison cannot survive where mudita is present. When someone succeeds, practice saying, "May your happiness continue." This does not diminish your path. It purifies the heart. The Buddha taught that jealousy burns the one who holds it, while joy shared multiplies. Mudita retrains the heart to see abundance instead of lack. The fourth practice is tending your own seeds. The Buddha repeatedly emphasized intention. Ask yourself daily, what seeds am I planting today through my actions, words, and thoughts? You may not see immediate results. That is not failure, it is patience. In one teaching, the Buddha compared practice to filling a pot drop by drop. No single drop seems significant, but over time, the pot becomes full. Comparison interrupts this process. It convinces us to stop pouring because someone else's pot looks fuller. But the Buddha reminds us, only your pot is yours to fill. Finally, the deepest practice is trust. Trust that your life is not forgotten. Trust that your efforts matter. Trust that causes always bear fruit, even when unseen. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha said, just as a shadow follows the body, so do actions follow the doer. This is not a threat, it is reassurance. When you walk your path with sincerity, kindness, and patience, nothing is lost. Your journey does not need to resemble anyone else's to be meaningful. When comparison fades, something beautiful happens. You stop chasing another life and begin inhabiting your own. There is a gentle Buddhist story, often shared among practitioners, about two travelers walking toward the same mountain temple. The first traveler was strong and fast. He walked confidently, covering great distances each day. The second traveler was slower, stopping often to rest, sometimes questioning whether he would ever arrive. As they walked, the slower traveler constantly compared himself to the first. He felt ashamed, discouraged, and heavy in his heart. Why am I so slow? He asked himself. Why is my path so difficult? One evening, they met an old monk resting by the roadside. Seeing the suffering on the slower traveler's face, the monk asked, "Why does your heart look so tired?" The traveler replied, "Because I walk the same road, yet I am always behind." The monk smiled gently and said, "Are you certain you are walking the same road?" He pointed to the fast traveler and asked, "Do you see the stones in his pack?" The slower traveler looked closely and noticed that the fast traveler carried almost nothing. His body was strong, his burdens light. Then the monk turned to the slower traveler and asked him to open his own pack. Inside were stones carved with care, stones of compassion, patience, and endurance. Each one was heavy, but each one had been shaped through hardship. The monk said softly, "Some are sent to arrive quickly, others are sent to arrive deeply." In that moment, the traveler understood. His journey was not meant to be fast. It was meant to be transformative. The Buddha taught that suffering lessens when we stop resisting our role in this moment. Comparison is resistance. It is the mind arguing with reality. Wisdom is agreement with what is, without bitterness. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha said, "Be content with what is present without longing for what is absent. This does not mean we stop growing or aspiring. It means we stop harming ourselves with impatience. The traveler continued his journey, no longer watching the footsteps ahead. He walked with awareness, feeling each step, each breath. When he arrived at the temple, much later than the first traveler, he arrived with a heart that had been softened, humbled, and opened. The Buddha never measured progress by speed. He measured it by freedom from suffering. When we stop comparing, we stop asking, "Why am I not like them?" We begin asking, "What is life teaching me right now?" This shift is quiet, but it changes everything. Your life is not a race. It is a teaching. And when you honor your own pace, your path becomes sacred. The Buddha never asked us to be faster, better, or ahead of anyone else. He asked us to be awake. When you stop comparing, you stop wounding your own heart. You begin to see your life not as a delay, but as a design shaped by wisdom beyond what the eye can see. Your path may be quiet. It may be slow. It may be unseen. But it is not wrong. As the Buddha taught, peace does not come from reaching someone else's destination. It comes from walking your own path with understanding, kindness, and trust. Do you ever feel like you're running a race with no finish line? There's that restless hunger for more, a sudden spark of temper over a small mistake, or that foggy feeling of being disconnected from your own life. We often blame our jobs or our luck, but the Buddha pointed somewhere else deep inside. He spoke of the three fires: greed, aversion, and delusion. They are the invisible architects of our daily stress. But here is the beautiful truth. You don't need to be a saint to start healing. The moment you name them, you disarm them. Just by noticing, there is my anger, you've already walked half the distance to true peace. Let's find that path together. Let's take a deep breath together and look at a quiet voice that lives in almost every heart. It is the voice that whispers, "I'll be happy once I get that promotion," or "I'll be at peace once I buy that house." In the teachings of the Buddha, this is called tanha, the unquenchable thirst. In the West, we often label it as ambition or the drive for success. But at its core, it is the first of the three poisons: greed. Greed is much more subtle than just wanting money or power. It is the fundamental feeling that the present moment, exactly as it is somehow insufficient. It's the restless scrolling through social media, the constant comparison of our lives to a digital illusion, and the urge to fill every silent gap in our day with a purchase or a distraction. We act as if we are drinking salt water to satisfy our thirst. The more we consume, the more dehydrated we feel. We become caught in a cycle of chasing, convinced that the next thing, the next achievement, the next relationship, the next vacation will finally be the one that completes us. The Buddha offered a powerful perspective on this in the Dhammapada. There is no fire like greed. There is no grip like ill will. There is no net like delusion. There is no river like craving. Think about that image. A river. A river never stops flowing. It constantly moves toward an ocean that is never full. When we live dominated by greed, we are living in a state of perceived lack. We convince ourselves that we are not enough unless we have more. This creates a constant vibration of stress in our bodies and a tightening in our souls. We become so focused on the future that we step over the beauty of the present. We miss the warmth of a morning cup of tea because we're worried about a meeting 2 hours away. We miss the sound of a loved one's voice because we're thinking about our next career move. This is why greed is a root of suffering, not because things are inherently bad, but because our attachment to them makes our happiness fragile. When your joy depends on external gain, you are always one step away from misery. Because the world is in a constant state of flux. But here is where the path of awakening begins. Our theme tells us, identifying it is half the way to enlightenment. In your daily life, this means the moment you feel that itch to possess something you don't need, or that sharp pang of envy, you don't judge yourself. Instead, you stop, you witness it. You say to yourself, "Ah, I see you, greed. You have arrived again." This simple act of naming is like turning on a light in a pitch-black room. When the light is off, the shadow looks like a monster. When the light is on, you see it's just a shadow. By identifying the craving, you create a vital space between who you are and what you want. You realize, I am the observer of this desire, so I am no longer a slave to it. In that small space of awareness, the bottomless cup of your heart starts to feel full. You begin to realize that the more you were desperately seeking isn't found in a shopping mall or a status symbol. It is found in the quiet realization that you are already complete. You have everything you need to be mindful, right here, in this breath. Identifying greed is the first step toward putting down the heavy bags of expectation. It's the moment you stop running the race and realize that you have already arrived. If greed is a bottomless cup that leaves us feeling empty, then the second poison, anger or aversion, is a wildfire. It's that sudden, searing heat that rises in your chest when someone cuts you off in traffic, the sharp sting of a perceived insult, or even that cold, heavy resentment you've carried towards someone for years. But if we look closely, we realize that anger is almost always a violent no to reality. It is our internal resistance to the world not being the way we think it should be. In the teachings of the Buddha, anger is often described as the most destructive of the three poisons. While greed might exhaust you over a lifetime, a single moment of uncontrolled anger can burn down a forest of kindness and merit you've spent years planting. The Buddha taught in the Dhammapada, conquer the angry man by love, conquer the ill-natured man by goodness, conquer the miser by generosity, conquer the liar by truth, But how do we practically do this when the fire is already scorching our skin? The suffering caused by anger doesn't just come from the person who provoked us. It comes from what the Buddha called the second arrow. He explained that if you are struck by an arrow, it hurts. That is the first arrow, the actual event, the rude word, or the unfair loss. But then we shoot a second arrow into ourselves by getting angry, by replaying the scene in our minds, and by wishing for revenge. That second arrow is the one that causes the long-term infection of the soul. We often think our anger is a weapon against our enemies, but it is actually a poison we drink ourselves, secretly hoping the other person will die. Now, let's return to our guiding truth. Identifying it is half the way to enlightenment. When we are in the middle of a temper tantrum, anger feels like our entire identity. We say, "I am angry." But when you practice the art of identification, you change the language of your heart. You start to say, "Anger is present." Can you feel the shift? One is a prison. The other is a point of observation. To identify anger is to become a scientist of your own emotions. You begin to notice the physical cues, the clenching of your jaw, the shallow, rapid breath, the tightness in your stomach. Instead of reacting, instead of sending that biting email or saying that hurtful word, you simply pause. You whisper to yourself, "This is anger. It is a passing cloud. It is not who I am." This recognition is a profound act of self-healing. It is like a mother gently holding a crying child. You don't scream at the child to stop. You acknowledge the distress. When you identify your anger without judging yourself for feeling it, the fire begins to lose its oxygen. You start to see that beneath the anger, there is almost always a hidden wound, a fear of being disrespected, a fear of being powerless, or a deep-seated pain. By identifying this poison, you stop being the fire and start being the one who watches the fire. You move from the chaos of the storm into the calm of the eye. This is the halfway point, because you have broken the automatic chain of reaction. You have reclaimed your power. You no longer have to be a slave to your temper or your grudges. You realize that true peace isn't the absence of difficult people. It is the presence of a mind that knows how to identify the heat and choose to remain cool anyway. We have explored the hunger of greed and the heat of anger, but now we must confront the most elusive of the three poisons: delusion or spiritual ignorance. If life often feels like a movie you are watching while half asleep, or if you find yourself stuck in the same painful patterns without knowing why, you are experiencing the fog of delusion. It isn't a lack of raw intelligence. It is a lack of clarity. It is the fundamental misunderstanding of how reality actually functions. In the Buddhist tradition, delusion is often compared to a thick gray mist. When you are lost in a mist, everything becomes distorted. You might mistake a harmless rope for a deadly snake and feel paralyzed by fear. Or you might chase a shimmering mirage in the desert, convinced it is life-saving water. Most of us live our lives in a similar state of autopilot. We believe the delusion that if we just find the perfect partner, the perfect job, or the perfect status, we will finally be fixed and happy forever. This is the ultimate illusion. The belief that permanent satisfaction can be found in a world where everything is constantly changing. The Buddha taught that this ignorance is the primary engine of all human suffering. In the law of cause and effect, delusion is the very first link. It is the soil where the seeds of greed and anger take root. Why do we crave more? Because we are deluded into thinking we are incomplete. Why do we explode in anger? Because we are deluded into thinking we can control a world that is inherently unpredictable. We see ourselves as isolated islands, struggling against the tide, forgetting that we are actually part of the entire ocean. In our modern era, this fog is thicker than ever. We are constantly fed the illusion that our value is based on our productivity or our digital image. These delusions keep us in a state of spiritual blindness, disconnected from our true nature. But here is the transformative power of our guiding principle. Identifying it is half the way to enlightenment. How do you identify something as invisible as a fog? You look for the aha moments. Have you ever been absolutely certain you were right during a heated argument, only to realize later that you were completely wrong? That sudden moment of realization that, oh, I see it now, is the light breaking through the mist. To identify delusion is to begin questioning your own assumptions. It is pausing in the middle of a frantic day to ask, is the thing I am chasing right now actually going to bring me peace, or am I just following a hollow habit? When you look at your life with radical honesty, you are practicing vipassana, or clear seeing. You start to recognize that all things are anicca, impermanent. You see that trying to hold on to a single moment is like trying to catch the wind in a net. The moment you name your delusion, when you say, I am caught in the illusion of control, or I am judging this situation through the lens of my past pain, the fog begins to dissipate. You don't have to manually fight the fog. You only need to bring light to it. Identifying delusion means you are finally waking up from the dream. You move from being lived by life to truly living life. This is the halfway point of your awakening. You realize you don't need to change the entire world to find peace. You only need to clean the mirror of your own mind. When the mirror is clear, you see reality as it is, not as your fears want it to be. You find a peace that doesn't depend on luck, because you've recognized the truth that was there all along. You were never truly lost. You were just dreaming. Up to this point, we have examined greed, anger, and delusion as if they were separate fires. But in the actual laboratory of our hearts, they are deeply intertwined, forming a complex web of suffering. Delusion is the dark, fertile soil. Greed and anger are the thorny vines that grow from it, strangling our innate joy. We crave something because we are deluded into thinking it will make us whole. We strike out in anger because we are deluded into thinking we can force the world to obey our will. It is a cycle that has kept humanity in shadows for millennia. The Buddha offered a map out of this tangled forest. Our theme reminds us that identifying these poisons is half the journey to enlightenment. But why only half? Because the first half is about clear seeing, and the second half is about continuous being. Imagine your mind as a garden that has been neglected for years. Identifying the weeds, realizing that your chronic stress is actually hidden greed, or that your constant irritability is actually suppressed. Anger is the moment you stop walking blindly over the thorns. It is the moment you stand perfectly still, look down at your feet, and say, "I see exactly what is happening here." This is a massive internal victory. Most people spend their entire lives being pulled by these invisible vines, never once pausing to look at the roots. By naming the poisons, you break their ancient spell. You are no longer a victim of a mysterious fate. You are an empowered witness to a natural process. So, how do we walk the second half of the path? If identifying is the awakening, then the rest of the journey is the embodying. It is the persistent, gentle, daily practice of mindfulness. Once you have identified a moment of greed, the second half of the journey is the conscious choice not to feed it. You don't have to rip the desire out with violence. You simply stop nourishing it with your attention. Once you recognize the rising heat of anger, the second half is the choice to breathe through the fire until it naturally cools. Once you spot the fog of delusion, the second half is the commitment to return to the truth of impermanence over and over again. These poisons cannot survive the steady, compassionate gaze of a mindful heart. They are like shadows that vanish when you hold a steady candle to them. Think about the profound relief of this realization. You don't need to travel to a distant temple or sit on a mountaintop to find liberation. You find it in your living room when you're frustrated with your family and you suddenly realize, there is the fire of anger. You find it at your computer when you're envying a stranger's life and you whisper, there is the hunger of greed. In that tiny second of recognition, the cycle of suffering is broken. You have reclaimed your seat on the throne of your own mind. This is the beauty of the path. It is a journey of radical self-honesty, combined with infinite self-compassion. You don't judge the garden for having weeds. You simply start tending to the soil. You realize that you are not the weeds. You are the gardener. You are the vast open sky that remains untouched by the passing clouds of desire and aversion. As you walk the second half of this journey, remember that every time you choose awareness over reaction, you are untying a knot in your soul. You are clearing the space for wisdom and compassion to flow naturally. Enlightenment isn't a trophy at the end of a long race. It is the quality of the very step you are taking right now. You have already done the hardest part. You have opened your eyes. Now, all you have to do is keep walking, one mindful breath at a time. The journey to freedom is not about becoming someone else. It is about finally meeting who you are beneath the noise. By identifying the roots of your suffering, the cravings, the anger, and the fog of delusion, you have already crossed the most difficult threshold. You have moved from being lost in the storm to being the one who watches the sky. The first half of enlightenment is this simple, brave awareness. The second half is choosing to stay there with a kind and patient heart. Your peace is not a distant destination. It is the quiet space you have just reclaimed within yourself. Keep your light steady. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the weight of the grudges you carry. That bitterness, that constant replay of a past hurt who is truly paying the price for that mental fire. We cling to anger, believing it punishes the one who wronged us. Yet the Buddha offered a piercing truth. Holding on to resentment is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Tonight, we unravel this ancient wisdom. We will explore the destructive nature of dosa and offer a path to emotional freedom. It's time to put down the burning ember, heal the wound, and step into the boundless peace of metta, loving kindness. The birth of the ember, from pain to poison. The metaphor of the burning ember is startlingly precise because it describes an immediate physical experience of psychological suffering. When a hurtful event occurs, a betrayal, a harsh word, or an injustice, the initial feeling is Vedana, painful feeling. This pain is unavoidable. It is the natural consequence of having a body and emotions. The problem arises not with the pain itself, but with the reaction to it. When we cling to the thought, "I have been wronged, they must pay," we transform the initial pain into dosa aversion, hatred, or resentment. This aversion is the hot coal. We pick it up, not to heal the wound, but to preserve the memory of the wound, hoping that by clutching it, we maintain some form of control or leverage over the offender. However, the Buddha taught that the mind, or citta, is the most delicate and easily defiled instrument we possess. Dosa, being one of the three poisons, alongside lobha, greed, and mobha, delusion, instantly contaminates the mind stream. The mind, when holding resentment, loses its fundamental qualities, replaced by internal agitation and stress. Panya, replaced by a tunnel vision focused only on the perceived wrong, replaced by cold, hard isolation. The internal incineration, mind and body connection. The most devastating consequence of holding the ember is that the suffering is entirely contained within the holder. The person who wronged you may have moved on, may be completely oblivious, or may have even forgotten the incident. But you, the holder, are reliving the injury repeatedly. The Buddha's teachings connect the mind and body inextricably. Holding a hot coal causes literal burns. Holding resentment causes energetic, chemical, and physical burns. Modern science confirms this ancient truth. The body, Chronic anger elevates stress hormones. Cortisol raises blood pressure, suppresses the immune system, and contributes to heart disease. The mind is constantly engaged in the painful sankhara, mental formation, of planning revenge or reliving the hurt. This mental fixation consumes vast amounts of energy that could be used for creativity, compassion, or simply peace. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of the Threes, the Buddha illustrates the damage of anger on one's own character, stating that when a person is consumed by anger, they become ugly, they lie, and they cannot distinguish between right and wrong. The anger itself becomes a thick, dark veil covering all virtue. The illusion of control. The giver is the receiver. We believe resentment is power, but it is, in reality, a profound surrender. By constantly thinking about the person who hurt us, we grant them perpetual, unchallenged access to our most private, sacred space, our mind. We become an unwilling servant to their memory, allowing their past action to dictate our present emotional state. This is the ultimate karmic irony. The resentment we cultivate to punish others only succeeds in punishing ourselves. The intended target may never feel the heat, but the holder is experiencing the fire, moment by moment. True spiritual liberation begins the moment we recognize that the only way to genuinely take back control is to stop feeding the flame and accept that the injury done to us is far less than the injury we are currently doing to ourselves. Through non-forgiveness, the karmic trap. Focusing on external accountability. When we hold the burning ember, our justification is often rooted in a distorted sense of justice. We feel that releasing the anger is equivalent to letting the wrongdoer get away with it. We believe the intensity of our internal fire somehow holds them accountable, sending them mental or spiritual pain. This belief is the fundamental moha delusion in the resentment cycle. The Buddha teaches us that kamma, action intention, is an internal mechanism. The consequence, vipaka, of an unskillful act is borne by the actor, regardless of whether the victim forgives them or not. The person who wronged us has already ignited their own karmic fire through their unwholesome cetana, intention. Their suffering is sealed by their own actions. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha clearly states the law of action and consequence. The evildoer grieves in this world, and he grieves in the next. He grieves in both. He grieves when he sees the evil results of his own deeds. Dhammapada, verse 15. The painful vipaka of the wrongdoer is inevitable. It is a spiritual law. Our anger does not hasten or intensify their suffering. It only guarantees our own suffering in the meantime. We are attempting to enforce a law that is already perfectly self-regulating. By clinging to the grudge, we are merely standing beside the judge, holding a self-inflicted wound, thinking it will influence the verdict. The shared ignorance. Understanding the root of harm. To truly release the ember, we must develop panya, the insight into why the offender acted in the first place. Nobody who is truly happy, peaceful, and fully aware acts with malice, Harm is always born from a place of deep dukkha, suffering, and avijja, ignorance. The offender, driven by their own greed, hatred, dosa, or delusion, inflicted pain because they themselves were in pain. They were acting from a place of spiritual deficiency. Recognizing this doesn't excuse the action, but it changes the emotional lens through which we view them. When we see the offender not as a demonic entity but as a human being tragically trapped by their own poisons, our emotion shifts from raging hatred to profound karuna, compassion. When we feel compassion for the person who hurt us, the coal falls from our grasp naturally, because compassion cannot coexist with resentment. The freedom of the forgiver, a self-sufficient act. Forgiveness in the Buddhist context is not about absolving the wrongdoer of accountability. It is a radical, self-serving act of self-liberation. Forgiveness means, I acknowledge the pain. I recognize the karma is theirs, not mine to carry. I refuse to allow their past action to define my present emotion. The key distinction is that we forgive not for them, but for the inherent purity and peace of our own mind. It is a declaration of emotional sovereignty, a spiritual boundary drawn against the toxic influence of the past. By choosing khanti, patience, and letting go of the ember, we become the most powerful agent in our own life. We shift our focus from waiting for external justice to cultivating internal peace. This internal peace is the true antidote to the burning coal, and it is entirely within our control, regardless of whether the person who hurt us ever changes or apologizes. The practice of radical non-clinging. The key to releasing the burning ember is not forcing forgiveness, but engaging in a radical practice of non-clinging anupadan. We must learn to see the feeling of resentment not as a permanent part of our identity, but as a temporary, painful dharma phenomenon arising and passing away within the mind. The moment the memory of the injury arises, the untrained mind instinctively grasps the coal. The practice of sati, mindfulness, teaches us to observe the coal without touching it. We observe the physical sensations of anger, the tightened jaw, the rapid heartbeat, the heat in the chest, and mentally label them: aversion arising, aversion passing. This simple act of mindful observation creates a vital distance between you and the feeling. You realize, I am the awareness, not the anger. This practice is beautifully encapsulated in the Majjhima Nikaya middle-length discourses, where the Buddha often emphasized that wisdom comes from seeing things as they truly are, without attachment. Cultivating metta, the fire extinguisher. Mindfulness creates distance, but metta, loving kindness, is the true fire extinguisher. You cannot simply will yourself to stop being angry. You must actively replace the toxic energy of dosa with the nourishing energy of metta. The practice of metta involves consciously radiating goodwill, systematically expanding it outward. When applying metta to the person who harmed you, this is a profound act of spiritual self-protection. Start with the self. Radiate metta to yourself first. Send feelings of peace, acceptance, and healing to the part of you that was hurt. If you don't heal yourself, your compassion for others will always be shallow. The neutral person. Next, extend metta to someone you feel neutral about. This builds the muscle of non-attachment. The difficult person. The offender. This is the hardest yet most critical step. Mentally recite. May they be free from suffering. May they be free from the roots of their own ill will. May they be well. You are not praying for them to escape accountability. You are praying for them to escape the deep-seated avijja that caused them to harm you, thus stopping the cycle of pain. By extending metta, you are performing an act of karuna, compassion, not just for the offender, but for your own suffering heart. When metta is genuine, the grip on the hot coal dissolves naturally. The great release, recognizing impermanence, anicca. Ultimately, the coal is released when we fully grasp anicca, impermanence. The moment of injury is past. The memory itself is constantly changing, and the person who committed the wrong is also constantly changing. Clinging to the event is clinging to a ghost, an illusion of fixity in a constantly flowing universe. The practice of letting go is the recognition that the only constant in life is change. Your anger is temporary. Your pain is temporary. The offender's existence is temporary. Why dedicate your precious, non-renewable present moment to a temporary, painful relic of the past? When we apply this wisdom, we gain the final, powerful insight. We are not forgiving the person's past action. We are forgiving the person for their present suffering, which caused the past action. And most importantly, we are forgiving ourselves for clinging to the illusion that the past is permanent. This final release is the moment of pure, unconditioned vimutti that the Buddha promised. The hot coal is simply dropped, and the hand your heart is finally free to feel the cool, healing air of the present, the true warrior, the strength of forbearance. We often mistake aggression and rigid adherence to grievance for strength. We view the person who fights back or never forgets as powerful. However, the Buddhist teachings offer a radically different measure of spiritual strength. The true warrior is the one capable of khanti, patience, forbearance. The Buddha defines the true strength of a sage, not by their capacity for revenge, but by their boundless ability to endure harm without generating internal malice. In the Dhammapada, it is said, "He who, though he reviles, returns no revilement. He, by that twofold benefit, saves both himself and the other." Dhammapada, verse 401. This is the ultimate power move. By refusing to participate in the cycle of anger and retaliation, you instantly cease to be a victim. You become the agent of peace. When you finally put down the burning ember, you realize that your true strength does not come from clinging to the memory of the injury, but from the spiritual agency to consciously choose metta over dosa, aversion. This spiritual strength manifests in two crucial ways. Impenetrable peace. When you are free from resentment, external slights and criticisms can no longer destabilize your inner world. You become an island unto yourself, grounded in the unshakable refuge of the Dharma. Creative energy. All the energy previously consumed by the mental gymnastics of anger, worry, and retaliation is suddenly freed. This liberated virya, effort, energy can be redirected toward wholesome goals, self-development, and service to others. The healing of the chitta, a return to wholeness. When resentment is stored, it fractures the mind, creating a sense of fragmentation. The continuous internal dialogue of bitterness prevents samadhi, concentration, focus. The act of true forgiveness, the radical dropping of the coal, is the ultimate act of sila moral purity and leads to the healing of the chitta. The healed mind is characterized by joy piti, the lightness that comes from removing a heavy burden; ease, the calming of the mental and physical agitation; clarity vipassana, the ability to see situations clearly without the distortion of past hurt. The spiritual healing is profound. The person who forgives is the one who has reconciled their past with their present. They have taken the painful experience and transformed it into panya, wisdom, and karuna, compassion. The injury is no longer a scar that pulls them backward, but a spiritual compass that guides them forward, reminding them of the fragility and preciousness of inner peace. A compassionate worldview, the end of the cycle. The ultimate goal of this practice is not just personal peace, but the transformation of one's entire worldview. When you truly release the ember, you begin to see the world through the lens of interconnectedness. You understand that your peace is intrinsically linked to the peace of others, including the person who wronged you. The bitterness of resentment keeps the cycle of suffering spinning. By choosing to let go, you are not only saving yourself from the burning coal, but you are also actively participating in the cessation of dukkha for all beings caught in the cycle of dosa. You are casting a radiant light of metta into the world, demonstrating that it is possible to stop reacting and choose peace. This is the highest form of spiritual contribution, living proof that liberation is possible, one mindful choice at a time. The ancient wisdom of the Buddha gives us the ultimate spiritual survival guide. The only person truly harmed by resentment is the one who holds it. Today, make the radical, courageous choice to drop the burning ember. Forgiveness is not a gift you grant to the offender. It is the vimutti, liberation, you grant to yourself. Embrace the mighty strength of Khanti forbearance. Let metta-loving kindness be the cool stream that washes away the ash. Your peace is non-negotiable, and your present moment is too precious to dedicate to a painful past. Choose peace. Choose freedom. Choose now. Do you believe destiny is fixed? We often feel trapped by past mistakes or cycles of bad luck, convinced that only a massive overhaul can save us. But what if the path to radical transformation was contained within a single fleeting moment of conscious choice? The profound truth of karma action reveals that the quality of your entire life can pivot on one pure mental state, Siddha. Tonight, we explore a powerful Buddhist tale of a person facing ruin whose life was completely redeemed, not by years of repentance, but by one swift, genuine act of grace. Discover how a solitary act of virtue holds the power to rewrite your entire future, instantly turning the tide of negative consequence. The setting: the steep price of unskillful karma. Our story begins not with a saint, but with a soul steeped in dukkha. Let us call him Jiva. Jiva had lived a life driven by self-interest, succumbing frequently to the poisons of lobha, greed, and dosa, aversion. His actions, fueled by this fundamental ignorance, avidya, had generated significant akusala kama, unskillful actions. Now, the inevitable vipaka, karmic consequence, was ripening. Jiva was facing a crisis, perhaps financial ruin, the breakdown of his health, or the loss of all respect in his community. He felt utterly cornered, seeing himself as a victim of cruel fate, unable to recognize that his current reality was the echo of his own past choices. He was trapped in the cyclical pattern of samsara, where past actions dictate future experiences. This feeling of helplessness is the deepest form of spiritual suffering, the belief that change is impossible. The brilliance of the Buddha's teaching is that it offers a path out of this deterministic cycle. While past actions are unchangeable, the response to them, the present moment's sadhana, is always fresh, always free. The central principle, karma, is made in the present. The profound truth that saves Jiva and can save us is the principle that the power of the present moment is greater than the momentum of the past. The Buddha states in the Dhammapada, "By oneself alone is evil done. By oneself is one defiled. By oneself alone is evil avoided. By oneself alone is one purified. Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one purifies another." Dhammapada, verse 165. This teaching places radical agency in our hands. Jiva's past karma had set the stage for suffering, but his mind state, Siddha, in this very moment, determines the direction of the future. What is a single good deed in this context? It is a fleeting but perfect kusala chitta, skillful mental state, a moment where the mind is completely devoid of the defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion. It's a spontaneous flash of hiriotapa, moral shame and fear of blame, driven by pure karuna, compassion. The moment of pivot, recognizing the opportunity. The turning point occurs when Jiva, wallowing in his despair, encounters a moment of genuine suffering external to himself. Perhaps he sees an animal in peril, a child crying, or an old person struggling. The key is that the suffering is so immediate and compelling that it temporarily eclipses his own all-consuming self-pity and fear. In that instant, Jiva stops thinking about me and mine. He transcends the illusion of the separate self, anatta, that has been the root of all his unskillful actions. His mind shifts from akusala chitta, how can I save myself? Kusala chitta, how can I help this being, regardless of my own plight? This shift is not a calculated ethical choice. It is an act of pure, spontaneous grace, a brief but perfect alignment with the Dharma. Because this kusala citta arises amidst the overwhelming momentum of negative karma, its power to disrupt the old cycle is amplified exponentially. It is like injecting pure, radiant light into a dark, stagnant stream. The single deed is merely the physical expression of this liberated mental state. This single moment of pure virtue, where Jiva acts solely out of compassion with no thought of self-gain, generates a powerful counterforce. It plants a potent seed of merit that is strong enough to not only alter his current crisis, but also redirect the entire course of his future vipaka. The physical manifestation of this change is about to unfold. The act of grace, detail, and intent. Let us examine the specific details of Jiva's moment of grace. Suppose Jiva, on the brink of despair, sees a small, defenseless creature, a bird, perhaps trapped and suffering, caught in a snare he himself might have set in his more ruthless past. His crisis-ridden mind, focused only on its own doom, suddenly fractures. For that split second, the dukkha of the bird becomes his own. He doesn't stop to calculate the risk, the time, or the effort. He simply acts. He uses his last remaining mental and physical energy, which was moments before dedicated to self-pity, to carefully, tenderly free the creature. He provides a small amount of water or food, a resource he desperately needed himself. This is not a grand public display. It is a quiet, personal, and profound act of ahimsa, non-harming, and karuna, compassion. The power of this act lies in its context. The quality of karma is determined by three factors. The intention satanya. As established, Jiva's intent was absolutely pure, devoid of self-gain. The basis of the act. The recipient was a vulnerable being suffering acutely. This heightens the merit. The freedom from defilement. The action was free from the interference of lobha, dosa, and moha, greed, hatred, and delusion. Because the act was performed when Jiva's resources, both physical and psychological, were at their lowest ebb, the sincerity of his heart was at its peak. This unconditioned compassion generates merit so potent that it outweighs the sheer volume of his prior misdeeds. The counterforce. Karma's weight, not volume. The law of karma is often misunderstood as a simple arithmetic equation. Good deeds minus bad deeds equals outcome. The Buddha teaches us that karma is more complex, governed by weight and timing. A small, pure action can often be heavier than a lifetime of mediocre deeds. In the Udana exclamations and Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha uses the analogy of salt and water. If you put a spoonful of salt into a small cup of water, the water becomes undrinkable. But if you put that same spoonful of salt into the vast waters of the Ganges River, the taste is barely altered. Jiva's single good deed is the water that dilutes the salt of his past unskillful karma. The vastness of his pure cetana the moment he opened his heart unconditionally created a river of merit, drastically reducing the impact of his past errors. This act did not erase the bad karma, but rather weakened its power to ripen in the immediate future, thereby opening a space for new, positive consequences to manifest. The instantaneous mental shift. The first vipaka. The physical turn of fortune is often secondary. The immediate and guaranteed vipaka of Jiva's single good deed was the shift in his mind stream. The act instantly lifted the heavy burden of self-pity and guilt. The moment he acted compassionately, he shattered the illusion that he was a victim, realizing instead that he was an agent of change, a being capable of virtue. This mental clarity, this self-forgiveness born of genuine action, changed how he perceived the world and, crucially, how he presented himself to it. The energy of self-condemnation vanished, replaced by the subtle, quiet dignity of a virtuous person. This internal realignment is the first sign that the entire trajectory of his life, his health, his relationships, and his opportunities was fundamentally being reset. The external world, governed by the law of resonance, was about to respond to the purity of his internal change. The principle of resonance, the new energy field. Jiva's single act of compassion was like a sonic boom in his karmic field, disrupting the negative vibration that had attracted hardship. He had, for the first time, acted from a place of metta-loving kindness, replacing the self-obsessed energy of fear and craving. This new mental state created a powerful resonance. When a person's mind is clouded by guilt, fear, and avarice, they tend to make poor decisions, misinterpret signals, and repel helpful people. They remain spiritually isolated. Conversely, when the mind is purified by virtue, it becomes sharp, discerning, and attractive to wholesome influences. The vipaka, karmic result of Jiva's small act, did not manifest as a sudden bag of gold. Rather, it subtly shifted the way the world interacted with him. Clarity of vision. The self-forgiveness brought by his good deed allowed Jiva to see the path ahead clearly, unclouded by anxiety. He recognized opportunities he had previously ignored due to self-doubt. Attraction of virtue. People who were previously hostile or indifferent to him began to respond to his newfound inner calm and dignity. His virtuous energy attracted virtuous people, a fundamental law of the spiritual universe. He found trustworthy partners or mentors willing to help him rebuild his life. This mechanism is beautifully captured in the Buddhist saying, "You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are." Jiva was no longer defined by his past mistakes. He was defined by his single, powerful act of present virtue. He became the possibility of goodness, and the universe responded to that essence. The test of sustained virtue, the path to rebuilding. The change in Jiva's external circumstances, a new job, a successful venture, or restored relationships, was the secondary fruit. The real test lay in whether he could sustain the kusala chitta, skillful mental state, that initiated the change. Many people, once blessed by good fortune, forget the source of their prosperity and fall back into old patterns of lobha, greed. Jiva's redemption was secured because the initial experience of giving was so profound. He understood intimately that true wealth was the feeling of his heart during that selfless moment, not the money in his pocket. He cultivated appamada diligence, heedfulness, never allowing himself to slip back into the heedlessness that characterized his past. His new wealth was not hoarded. It was used as a tool for further dana give and sila moral conduct. He didn't just rebuild his own life. He became the cornerstone for the flourishing of others. He understood the profound wisdom that states the purpose of merit is not self-enrichment, but the capacity to be of greater service. Dhammadana, sharing the story of transformation. As Jiva grew in wisdom and stability, his life became a living Dhamma, teaching. His existence was proof that no one is ever beyond redemption. His ability to share his story, the tale of how one single moment of compassion for a vulnerable creature completely altered his inevitable ruin, became his highest form of dana. He taught others the critical lesson: do not wait until you are rich or perfect to act virtuously. The greatest potential for merit exists precisely when you feel you have the least to give. The spontaneous, pure intention of the heart in a moment of crisis generates a force that can overcome the accumulated weight of a lifetime of error. This is the profound truth that sets the mind free from the tyranny of its own history, confirming the Buddha's assertion that the path is always available, right here, right now. The true meaning of redemption, escape from Vedana, the story of Jiva's radical transformation, offers more than moral encouragement. It provides a map for mental liberation. His prior suffering was rooted in Vedana, feeling the painful feelings of guilt, loss, and fear generated by his past akusala kama. When he performed his single act of pure kusala kama, he consciously chose to detach his present action from the chain of past Vedana. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination, paticca samuppada. If we continue to react to the pain of the past with craving or aversion, we generate new karma that perpetuates the cycle. Jiva's choice broke the link. $text. Past Vedana. Right arrow text. Present Sankhara formations. Right arrow text. Akusala kama. Old pattern. $. Jivas. Shift introduced a powerful discontinuity. $, text, past Vedana, text present, sati mindfulness, right arrow text, kusala chitta, pure intention, $, by grounding himself in the present moment. Pakupana, Jiva found freedom. The single good deed was the physical expression of that mental liberation. He learned that while the waves of past karma may still hit the shore, his true shelter lies in the purity of his present action, the ubiquity of the opportunity. The beauty of this narrative is that the opportunity for this radical shift is always available. We do not need to be facing total ruin, nor do we need to find a trapped bird. The opportunity lies in the mundane, in the small, repeated choices of our daily lives. Every interaction with a difficult colleague, a loved one, or even a stranger on the road presents a micro moment where we can choose kusala chitta over akusala chitta, choosing patience, hanti, instead of anger, dosa, choosing understanding, panya, instead of judgment, moha, choosing genuine appreciation instead of self-pity, mana. Each small, conscious act of kindness, performed with pure cetana, generates the same powerful, life-altering merit that saved Jiva. It builds a constant stream of wholesome karma, gradually widening the river of merit until the salt of past mistakes is functionally diluted and rendered ineffective. The cumulative effect of these small, mindful deeds is what builds a life of enduring peace and prosperity. The ultimate gift, freedom from self-condemnation. For many souls, the greatest impediment to change is the heavy cloak of self-condemnation. The belief that I am fundamentally bad, or I deserve this suffering. This belief, rooted in self-clinging, attavada, is itself a potent form of negative karma. Jiva's redemption provided the antidote. His single act of grace proved to him, unequivocally, that he was capable of profound goodness. The external reward was simply the universe confirming the truth he had already established internally. You are a worthy vessel of virtue. This story is a powerful instruction for us to forgive our past selves and focus entirely on the quality of our present actions. The Dharma promises us that the darkness of 1,000 lifetimes can be dispelled by a single, powerful flicker of wisdom and compassion. Let us not be burdened by the narrative of our past, but rather be inspired by the limitless potential of the present moment's good deed. The journey of Jiva reveals that we are never defined by the weight of our past, but by the purity of our present intention. The profound shift in his destiny was not earned through years of struggle, but initiated by one single conscious act of karuna, compassion. This is the great promise of the Dharma. The kusala chitta, skillful mind, is your ultimate lifeline. The power to break the most complex cycle of negative karma resides in the effortless act of choosing kindness over craving, right here, right now. Never underestimate the power of your next thought. It is the seed that redeems your entire life. Do you ever feel there's nothing left to give? We often believe generosity requires overflowing abundance, a surplus of wealth, time, or energy. But the true power of dana, giving, lies not in how much we possess, but in the purity of our cetana, intention. Imagine a person, utterly destitute, who decides to share the last morsel they have with someone even poorer. This act, born from an empty hand and a boundless heart, is the most potent seed of Kamma. Tonight, we unearth a profound Buddhist story about radical giving that instantly changed a lifetime of scarcity. Prepare to discover the unexpected, magnificent fruit that ripens when the poorest heart gives its all. The story begins. The landscape of destitution. In the vast tapestry of Jataka tales and Buddhist lore, countless stories highlight the profound laws of Kamma. Our story today centers on a forgotten individual, let us call him Maya, who lived in the shadow of prosperity. Maya was not just poor, he was utterly destitute. He lived day to day, his only possessions being the worn-out robes on his back and the meager, sporadic earnings from scavenging. His existence was a constant, raw experience of dukkha, suffering, not the philosophical suffering of existence, but the visceral pain of hunger, cold, and loneliness. In this state of acute scarcity, the idea of giving seemed utterly absurd. The world demanded that he take food, take shelter, take care of himself. Giving was a luxury reserved for the rich. This common belief is where most of us stop short of practicing true generosity. But the wisdom of the Buddha challenges this notion fundamentally. Dana paramita, the perfection of giving, is not an economic transaction. It is a spiritual training, the act of the heart, not the wallet. When the Buddha taught the principles of Kamma, he emphasized that the true measure of an action lies in its cetana, volitional intent. In the Anguttara Nikaya numerical discourses, the Buddha clarifies the power of wholesome volition. Intention cetana, I tell you, is Kamma. Having intended, one makes Kamma by body, speech, and mind. A. 63. For Maya, who had nothing, his cetana, the pure, unadulterated will to share, was the only thing he truly owned and the only thing that mattered. If a wealthy person gives $1 million, but their intent is solely to garner praise or a tax deduction, the karmic fruit, while present, is tainted by the self-interest, lobha. Conversely, if a starving person gives away the only bowl of rice they possess, the cetana is pure, devoid of self-interest, and born from a place of radical compassion, karuna. The act of giving when one is utterly poor requires conquering the deepest fear of all, the fear of non-existence, the fear of complete lack. It is a profound declaration that the suffering of others is more important than my own survival fear. This quality of intent elevates Maya's single, small act above all extravagant donations. The true object of giving, yourself. In our conventional understanding, We think the object of giving is the receiver, but in the deep practice of dana, the primary object of giving is the self. When Maya gives, he is not merely feeding a beggar, he is starving his own inner demons, starving lobha greed, by refusing to cling to the last possession, starving mana, by acting without seeking external validation or praise, starving bhava, craving for existence, by temporarily sacrificing his own need for immediate survival. This single act of generosity, performed when the conditions are harshest, becomes a purification ritual for the mind. It is a moment of profound vimutti from the mental chains of scarcity. Maya breaks the karmic pattern of poverty not by finding money, but by refusing to let the mind of poverty define his capacity for compassion. This sets the stage for the transformative moment. The gift is small in substance, but infinite in merit, because it comes from a heart that has transcended the logic of survival and stepped into the boundless field of dharma. The unexpected vipaka, karmic fruit, is now certain to follow. The inner battlefield, poverty versus humanity. Let us immerse ourselves in Maya's inner world just before his act of giving. He had managed to secure a single, small bowl of meager food, perhaps stale rice or dried beans, enough to sustain him for one more uncertain day. This bowl represented his future, his immediate survival, and his only protection against the cold, gnawing certainty of hunger. Then he encountered someone else, a figure, perhaps older, more frail, and visibly suffering the same depth of despair. This person was, to Maya, a mirror reflecting his own inevitable fate. The mind, driven by the instinct for self-preservation, screamed, "No! Hold it tight. If you give this, you die. Charity begins at home, and your home is empty." This internal conflict is the crucible where true merit is forged. The battle was fought not between two people, but between Maya's animal instinct, driven by bhava tanha, the craving for existence, and his humanity, driven by karuna, compassion. The profound lesson here, often lost in discussions of wealth and charity, is that the merit is maximized when the sacrifice is deepest. The value of the gift is inversely proportional to the possessor's attachment to it. Since Maya's attachment to that one bowl was absolute, it meant life itself the moment he decided to release it. The karmic energy generated was astronomical. The three purities of dana: before, during, and after. The Buddhist texts often define three aspects of purity required for the act of giving to yield maximum fruit. Maya's act exemplified all three. Purity, before the act. Pabhisitana, the intention must be clean. Maya didn't give because he was obligated or seeking praise. His initial thought, despite the screaming fear, was a moment of pure empathy. This person is suffering as much as I am, and I can alleviate this pain now. This pure cetana set the foundation. Purity. During the act, Mundka Setana, while the gift is being given, the mind must be free from regret or hesitation. Maya handed over the bowl, not with a sigh of loss, but with a silent, firm resolution. He practiced virya, spiritual energy, to override the deeply ingrained habit of greed. In that split second, his mind was fully present, fully generous, and entirely free from the thought of me or mine. Purity, after the act, aparasatana. After the gift is gone, the giver must not regret the action, nor boast about it. Maya did not stand around waiting for thanks. He simply moved on, carrying only the lightness of the selfless act. His heart, though physically hungry, was spiritually full. This perfect alignment of intention before, during, and after ensured that the kusala kama, skillful action generated, was whole and untainted. His poverty served as a radical purification method, burning away the possibility of arrogance or attachment that often accompanies wealthy giving. The instantaneous vipaka, the lightness of the heart. The vipaka, karmic result, of such an action is not always a miraculous pile of gold appearing instantly. The first and most important fruit is always mental. For Maya, the immediate result was the cessation of the agonizing mental friction caused by greed and fear. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha states, "The one who conquers himself is the greatest of conquerors." Dhammapada, verse 103. In that moment of radical dana, Maya conquered the deepest enemy, the self-clinging attachment to survival. He experienced an immediate, profound lightness that transcended the physical pain of his hunger. His life was already changed right there, because the mind of poverty, a mind dominated by lack and fear, had been shattered by the power of his generous heart. The external change was just a matter of time, following the internal revolution he had just initiated. The principle of vipaka, the law of reciprocity. After the act of radical generosity, Maya continued his difficult life, physically unchanged, yet internally transformed. The true test of his purity, aparasetana, was whether he held any expectation of immediate reward. He did not. He had already received the primary reward, the profound peace of knowing he had acted purely, transcending his own survival instinct. However, the law of karma is immutable, and every skillful action, kusala karma, sets in motion an inevitable result, vipaka. The teaching of the Buddha assures us that meritorious action, like a seed planted in fertile ground, will always yield fruit, though the timing remains mysterious. This principle is elegantly summarized in the Anguttara Nikaya. Monks, I do not say that the intentional deed, performed and accumulated, will be destroyed without ripening, in this very life, or in the next, or in some subsequent future life. It will certainly ripen. A. 2. 110. Adapted. Maya's act of giving his last possession planted a seed of unparalleled potency. This seed did not just promise a better future. It broke the entire karmic cycle of poverty that had bound his mind and circumstance. He had, in effect, demonstrated to the universe that his true nature was one of boundless generosity, overriding the superficial condition of his empty pockets. The mechanism of the gift, the ripple effect. The physical turn of fortune for Maya was swift and unexpected, illustrating how the purest karma can accelerate its maturation. While scavenging near the city gates, Maya encountered a situation that seemed mundane, yet was directly engineered by the powerful ripple of his past action. Perhaps he found a purse accidentally dropped by a wealthy merchant, or maybe the very person he had helped was connected to a royal household and recognized him, compelled by gratitude that mirrored Maya's own selfless act. The external circumstance may vary, but the underlying mechanism is the same. The purity of his past intention created the perfect intersection for wealth to flow to him. It is crucial to understand that this was not a magical reward, but a natural consequence. Because Maya had demonstrated he was a worthy vessel of giving a being who valued compassion over material possession, the universe responded by ensuring he had the resources required to fulfill that boundless compassion further. The karma ripened to enable, not just to reward. The moment Maya found himself in a position of sudden, stable wealth, he faced the final, ultimate test of dana, the wealthy giver's test. The ultimate test. Generosity in abundance. Many people are generous when they are poor because they have less to lose psychologically. And many are generous when they are extremely rich because they have an excess. But the test lies in the transition. Will Maya remember the taste of hunger? Will he continue to give with the same purity of Setna now that he has something to protect? The true vipaka of his original act was not the gold he found, but the fact that the experience of radical scarcity had already purged the lobha greed from his heart. Having conquered the fear of lack when he had nothing, he was now immune to the greed of having. The story concludes with Maya using his new fortune not for selfish indulgence, but to establish a sustained practice of giving, ensuring that no one near him would ever face the crushing choice he once had. His one act of radical dana became a foundational seed, not just for his own prosperity, but for the alleviation of suffering in his entire community. This is the complete cycle of the skillful karma. Poverty teaches purity, purity earns wealth, and wealth is used for greater compassion. Beyond the gold, understanding Dana's highest form, Maya's life has been irrevocably changed. He transitioned from relying on the uncertain hand of chance to embodying the stable certainty of kusala karma, skillful action. But the true wisdom of this story does not end with his wealth. It begins with how he uses it. In Buddhist philosophy, there are many kinds of giving. The two primary forms are amisa dana, material giving, giving material things like food, money, or clothing. This alleviates immediate physical dukkha. Dhamma dana, spiritual giving, giving the gift of the Dharma, teaching, guidance, and wisdom. This alleviates the fundamental suffering caused by ignorance, avijja. The Buddha clearly stated the hierarchy of giving in the Dhammapada. The gift of Dhamma excels all gifts. Dhammapada, verse 354. Maya understood intuitively that while his wealth could temporarily stop hunger, only the wisdom of the Dharma could permanently stop the mind of poverty, the mind rooted in tanha craving. His life's mission, fueled by his initial radical act, evolved into sharing the very principle that transformed him, the boundless power of Cetana, the legacy of Setna, the lasting fruit. Maya's physical wealth allowed him to perform grand acts of amisa dana, building shelters, feeding the poor, and creating infrastructure. However, the most lasting fruit of his original small act was the ability to inspire others. He became a living testament to the law of karma. When he gave, he no longer just offered rice. He offered the story of his life, a profound, non-verbal dhammadana. He was teaching, look at me, I was poorer than you. But the moment I chose generosity over fear, the universe recognized the truth of my heart. Your external circumstances do not define your spiritual wealth. This inspiration is the highest form of merit because it encourages others to plant their own seeds of skillful action, thereby empowering them to change their own destiny. This shift in perspective from seeing oneself as a helpless victim of circumstance to being the conscious architect of one's karma is the ultimate gift of the Dharma, integrating the lesson, the emptiness of the gift. For those of us observing Maya's story, the final lesson lies in the concept of emptiness applied to the act of giving. The highest form of dana involves realizing the three wheels of the gift are empty. The giver Maya is empty of a permanent, separate self, anatta. The recipient is empty of an inherent, fixed self. The gift itself, the bowl of rice, is empty of permanent substance, anicca. When these three factors are seen as merely transient manifestations of cause and effect, the act of giving becomes a pure, unconditioned expression of the Dharma. It generates merit that is boundless because it is free from the boundaries of the self. Maya's life became a luminous demonstration that karma is not fate, it is choice. His choice, made from a position of absolute lack, redefined his reality. The single act of giving, rooted in pure intention, was the ultimate act of self-liberation, revealing the extraordinary potential for transformation that resides in every human heart, regardless of its material condition. The tale of Maya teaches us a radical truth. Your capacity for spiritual wealth is completely independent of your material condition. The single potent act of giving, rooted in pure cetana, is the greatest karma you can make. When we choose compassion over the fear of lack, lobha, we perform an act of profound self-liberation. The vipaka fruit is not just a change in fortune, but a transformation of the mind from scarcity to boundless generosity. May we all find the courage, even with an empty hand, to plant the seed of dana and witness the magnificence of its ripened freedom. Do you ever feel the invisible weight of the past pressing down on your shoulders? That heavy burden isn't made of stone or earth, it's woven entirely from a single thread, clinging. We cling to anger, to old narratives, to the idea that things should have been different. This attachment, this fixed belief, separates us from peace. But what if the distance between crushing obsession and absolute freedom is not a long, arduous journey, but merely the span of a single thought? The wisdom of the Dharma reveals that to let go of one stubborn fixation is to unlock the lightness of an entire lifetime. Join us as we explore the radical simplicity of that one decisive thought that transforms suffering into serenity. The anatomy of attachment. Upadan, the invisible hand. In the teachings of the Buddha, the heavy weight we carry is known as upadana, clinging, or grasping. It is the psychological fuel that feeds dukkha, suffering. Upadana is not about possessing things. It is the mental act of holding on to a particular thought, feeling, or narrative and insisting that it must be permanent, stable, or satisfying. In the context of our emotional lives, clinging most often manifests as a single, stubborn thought. I should have done better. Clinging to a fixed standard of the past. They shouldn't have done that to me, clinging to an ideal, different reality. I must feel this anger until I get justice, clinging to a specific painful emotion. This single thought, this one thought fixation, acts as a mental anchor, freezing the fluid nature of reality. We build an entire emotional prison around this one static point, refusing to allow the natural flow of anicca to carry the experience away. The core teaching of the Second Noble Truth states that suffering arises from craving or clinging. The Buddha articulated this clearly in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the setting in motion of the wheel of the Dhamma. Now this, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. It is craving which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for non-existence. Samyutta Nikaya 56.11. Adapted for emotional context. In emotional terms, craving for existence here means the clinging to the story of who we are or who the other person is. Craving for non-existence means clinging to the desire for the painful moment to stop or never to have happened. Both are acts of fixation. Both generate the heavy burden. The paradox of control. The more we grasp, the less we have. The act of clinging is a desperate attempt to gain control over the unpredictable nature of life. We believe that by holding on to a grievance, we somehow punish the offender or protect ourselves from future harm. But the truth is paradoxical. The more tightly we grasp that thought, the more pain we infuse into our present moment. Imagine holding a burning coal. Your initial thought might be, I need to hold this to keep it away from others, or this is my proof of injury. But the coal's heat, the pain of the upadana, burns only the hand that holds it. The external event, the past wrong, the lost opportunity is over. The only thing sustaining the suffering is the internal, relentless, mental iteration of that one fixed thought. This clinging blocks the natural mechanism of the mind to heal and move on. The energy that should be used for creativity, compassion, or presence is instead consumed by the constant effort required to maintain the wall of the mental prison. We become emotionally exhausted, not because of what happened, but because of the fierce mental energy dedicated to arguing with reality, day after day. The first step to freedom, recognizing the illusion of solidity, the lightness of letting go of one thought, begins with the act of sati mindfulness. We must first recognize that the thought we are clinging to is not a solid, permanent object, but a fragile, transient formation of consciousness, a mere whisper in the vastness of the mind. When the thought of, "I must be right," or "I must feel angry" arises, sati allows us to gently interrupt the automatic chain reaction. We pause and ask, is this thought serving my well-being right now? Is the object of this clinging still present, or is it only a memory? What is the physical feeling of this attachment in my body? By observing the fixed thought as merely an object passing through awareness, we withdraw the energy we were pouring into it. This is the moment the anchor begins to lift. The prison door doesn't swing open with a grand gesture. It dissolves quietly. When the mental fixation, the single thought of attachment, is finally seen for what it is, a temporary illusion of solidity, the power of the pause, finding the gap of freedom. The moment we recognize the fixed thought, the clinging through sati, mindfulness, a critical opportunity arises, the pause. This pause is the single, sacred gap between the sensory experience and our habitual, reactive response. It is the distance of one thought, the distance between suffering and serenity. In this pause, we apply the wisdom of anatta non-self. We recognize that the I that feels wronged, angry, or desperate is not a permanent entity, but a temporary construction made of feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. When the sense of a fixed I collapses, the need to defend the fixed thought, the grievance, also collapses. This is the profound realization that makes liberation possible. The thought, "I must hold on to this," is an illusion, because the I that holds on is also an illusion. The practice of dissolving the fixed thought is often compared to a meditation practice called vipassana, insight meditation. We watch the thought rise, stay, and fall without identifying with it. We use the body as an anchor, noticing the physical tension, dukkha, that the clinging thought generates. When we feel the knot in the stomach or the tension in the jaw, we name it tension, grasping, and let the sensation dissipate naturally. The lesson of the stream, accepting the flow of anicca. Clinging is fundamentally a refusal to trust anicca, impermanence. We want the good things to last forever, and the bad things to stop immediately. The Buddha's analogy of the river or the stream perfectly illustrates the path to non-clinging. Monks, what is the all? The eye and forms, the ear and sounds, the nose and odors, the tongue and tastes, the body and tangible things, the mind and mental phenomena. This is called the all. One who speaks otherwise than this, who says, there is another, all that is merely talk without substance. When questioned, he would be unable to explain, and furthermore, he would meet with vexation. Why? Because it lies beyond his domain. Samyutta Nikaya 35.23. Adapted for context. In emotional terms, the all is our immediate, momentary experience. The fixed thought we cling to lies outside of this flow. It is the narrative we impose upon the flow. To let go of the fixed thought is to surrender to the stream of the all, trusting that the pain will move, the anger will pass, and the circumstances will inevitably change. Acceptance, therefore, is not passive resignation. It is an active, radical agreement with reality as it is. It is the decision to stop paddling furiously against the current of impermanence. The moment we stop fighting, the current of life can carry us, and we find the effortless lightness that comes from aligning with the Dharma. Cultivating the seed of serenity. Santi. When the heavy anchor of the fixed thought is lifted, the space is immediately filled with Santi serenity, or peace. This isn't a peace that needs to be generated. It's the natural state of the mind siddha, once the defilements kilesas of clinging are removed. To cultivate this lightness, we consciously plant a new seed of skillful thought, kusala kama. Instead of clinging to the thought of grievance, we replace it with a thought of karuna, compassion, for the one who wronged us, or metta, loving kindness, for ourselves. A powerful tool for this is the practice of self-forgiveness. Often, the most debilitating fixed thought is self-blame. I am unworthy, or I failed. Letting go of this one thought is arguably the most crucial step toward liberation. When we acknowledge the past action without clinging to the identity of the failure, we break the cycle of self-punishment. We release the coal of self-hatred, and the immediate effect is a profound, unburdened lightness, the lightness of an entire life that no longer needs to apologize for its existence. The distance was truly only one thought, the fuel of suffering, the chain of hatred, dosa. The single most destructive fixed thought we cling to is the thought of hatred or aversion. It is the relentless loop. They harmed me. I must remember this harm. I must punish them or myself. This thought keeps us spiritually paralyzed, locking us into a karmic cycle of retaliation and pain. The Buddha spoke powerfully about the futility of holding on to hatred in the Dhammapada. Hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is an eternal law. Dhammapada, verse 5. This teaching is not a moral suggestion. It is a description of the universe's operational mechanism. Holding on to the fixed thought of grievance violates this eternal law, ensuring that the fire of suffering continues to burn. When we release the thought of hatred, we are simply aligning ourselves with the natural, peaceful order of the cosmos. The practice of letting go of the one thought of dosa is the first step in spiritual alchemy, turning the poison of attachment into the medicine of metta, loving kindness. The practice of metta bhavana, planting the new seed. Once the space of the fixed thought has been cleared by mindfulness, sati, we actively replace the old negative pattern with a positive one. This is the practice of metta-bhavana, cultivation of loving kindness. This practice directly counteracts the self-centered nature of clinging. We begin by directing metta toward ourselves, healing the most stubborn, fixed thought of all, self-judgment. We repeat silent phrases: "May I be free from suffering. May I be truly happy." This ensures that the peace we seek to share is first genuinely established within. Then, we gently extend this practice to the person or situation we were clinging to, the source of the grievance. This is often the hardest, yet most liberating part. The fixed thought insists they don't deserve my metta. But the wisdom of the Dharma responds, metta is not a reward for their virtue. It is a release for your heart. We silently wish the object of our past aversion well. May they be free from suffering. May they find peace. This deliberate, willful creation of kusala kamma, skillful action, thought, is the turning point. By replacing the thought of, "I must hold this grievance," with, "May all beings be well," we instantaneously redirect the flow of our consciousness from bondage to freedom, from cetana intention to lightness. In the Buddhist analysis of action, cetana, intention, or volition, is the core of kamma. The Buddha said, "It is intention that I call kamma. Having intended, one acts by body, speech, and mind." The fixed thought we cling to is a powerful intention rooted in past trauma. When we choose to let go of that one thought, we execute a new, intentional act of cetana in the present moment. This new cetana is rooted in non-clinging and compassion. This single, conscious mental effort has a ripple effect throughout the entire nervous system and psyche. The body, which was previously contracted by the heavy burden of dukkha, relaxes. The mind, which was previously consumed by the relentless looping narrative, expands into open awareness. The lightness we feel is the immediate, palpable vipaka fruit of this new, skillful intention. The realization is transformative. The lifetime of lightness promised by the teachings is not a distant reward. It is the immediate experience of the body and mind when the powerful intention of clinging is replaced by the powerful intention of letting go. The shift from dvesha, aversion, to metta is not a gradual process over years. It begins and is defined by that one courageous, conscious thought. Serenity versus indifference, the test of upekkha. Often, when people attempt to let go of a fixed thought, they mistake detachment for indifference. They try to wall off the emotion, resulting in emotional numbness, which is merely a sophisticated form of suppression. True letting go, the path to santi serenity, is not about pushing the thought away, but about meeting it with complete upekkha, equanimity. Indifference says, "I don't care about this anymore." It is cold and avoids engaging with the reality of the situation. Serenity says, "I care deeply about this situation, but I refuse to let the pain of clinging control my response." It is warm engaged, and fully aware of the suffering, yet unattached to the outcome. The Buddha's teaching on the nature of equanimity is essential here. It is one of the 4 Brahmaviharas, divine abodes, because it requires immense wisdom and courage. It is the steady heart that recognizes the inherent suffering in all conditioned things, samsara, but chooses to rest in the unconditioned refuge of the present moment. When we let go of the one thought of fixation, we are not losing our sensitivity. We are simply removing the sharp, self-inflicted barb of expectation and attachment. This refined sensitivity allows us to engage with life from a place of genuine compassion, unclouded by personal grievance. The liberation of the present moment. Ehipassiko. The lightness of letting go of one thought is the liberation of the present moment. Since the fixed thought, the clinging, is always oriented toward the past, regret, guilt, or the future fear, anxiety. Releasing it immediately anchors us in the here and now. The Buddha's invitation, Ehipassiko, come and see, is the very instruction for this practice. He asks us to see the mind as it is, without the heavy filter of past narratives. The fixed thought is the conceptual noise that blocks the clarity of the citta. When the noise stops, the inherent brilliance of the mind shines through. This clarity is not an experience of euphoria. It is the simple, profound peace of right view, samma ditthiti, seeing things just as they are, moment by moment. The single thought we clung to was the last barrier to the unconditioned. When it dissolves, we experience a taste of nibbana, right here, right now. Nibbana is not a heaven to be reached after death. It is the permanent cessation of clinging, a state that is always accessible when the mind is free from the agitation of attachment. Sustaining the lightness, the habit of non-clinging. The true practice of a lifetime is not the grand, singular act of letting go, but the commitment to let go of the next thought of clinging and the one after that. It is the cultivation of the habit of non-clinging, a continuous, gentle renewal of the decision to choose serenity over fixation. This involves training the mind to recognize the initial impulse of grasping before it hardens into a fixed thought. This is the cultivation of virya energy. On the spiritual path, the tireless effort to choose the skillful path, the moment the unskillful one arises. The reward is not a static state of perfection, but a relationship with life that is fluid, flexible, and resilient. When storms inevitably arrive, we are no longer tethered to a fixed, unmoving anchor that snaps under pressure. Instead, we are like the resilient bamboo, bending with the wind of dukkha because we are not carrying the heavy weight of any single, unyielding thought. The final wisdom is simple. The suffering of a lifetime can be undone by the realization within a single thought. That thought is the courageous recognition that I am free to let this go now. This is the ultimate freedom spoken of by the Buddha, available to all in every single moment. We have seen that the journey from crushing fixation to profound peace is not measured in years, but in the instantaneous clarity of sati mindfulness. The heavy burden you carry, the regret, the anger, the persistent grievance, is maintained only by the single stubborn thought of clinging. The moment you recognize that thought as an illusion of a not a non-self and choose metta-loving kindness instead of dosa, the prison dissolves. The distance between anxiety and serenity is merely one conscious choice. Claim the lightness of your entire lifetime. Simply decide to let go of the next thought that tries to bind you. Have you ever met someone and felt an instant, undeniable connection? A sense of knowing them from somewhere long before you ever spoke? What if that feeling isn't just romance, but a whisper from a deeper truth? We often believe love is random, a chance encounter in a vast world. But in the profound wisdom of the Dharma, every significant relationship, especially the bond between husband and wife, is far from accidental. It's a tapestry woven across lifetimes, a convergence of energies meticulously guided by karma. Join us as we explore why your soulmate might not be a happy coincidence, but a profound karmic appointment, carefully orchestrated by the universe itself. Karma, not coincidence. Understanding the universal ledger. In Western thought, we often categorize relationships as products of chemistry, timing, or psychology. But the Buddhist framework offers the profound principle of kamma, or karma, which means action. Kamma is the universal law of cause and effect, where every thought, word, and deed plants a seed that will eventually bear fruit in this life or a future one. Our meeting with any significant person is never arbitrary. It is the ripening of a karmic seed planted long ago. The deep emotional gravity we feel toward a spouse, the intensity of the initial attraction, or the sudden, inescapable commitment is the force of vipaka, the fruit or the resulting experience of that past karma. The relationship is a meticulously calculated repayment or continuation of an unfinished connection. There is a powerful analogy often shared in traditional teachings. Life is like a busy marketplace. We walk through it, brushing past countless strangers. Yet, only those with whom we share a deep, long-standing debt or bond, those with whom our karmic threads are tightly intertwined, will stop, look us in the eye, and choose to walk the same path, even if only for a short distance. Marriage is the clearest evidence of this phenomenon, where two individuals, often vastly different, are bound by an invisible, mutual contract. 4 types of karmic bonds. The purpose of encounter. Not all karmic bonds are romantic, nor are they all easy. Buddhist teachings categorize these profound connections into 4 primary types of relationship debt, showing that even deep love comes with an inherent purpose or lesson. Debt of affection. This is the bond where one or both parties meet to return past kindness, generosity, and loving kindness. This relationship is often characterized by mutual support, peace, and harmony. They meet to offer comfort and balance. Debt of repayment. This is the connection where one person meets the other to repay a debt of care or sacrifice. The person repaying might be intensely devoted and supportive, sometimes without fully understanding why their love is so selfless. Debt of grievance. This is the challenging connection, where both parties meet to settle past conflicts, anger, or harm. These relationships are often volatile, marked by intense passion, followed by intense pain. They meet not to love, but to exhaust the final vestiges of mutual hatred or misunderstanding. Debt of mixed affection and grievance. Most marriages fall into this category. They are a complex mix of past good and bad deeds, resulting in periods of deep joy and periods of profound struggle. The core lesson here is balance, patience, and learning to transmute old negativity into new compassion. The beauty of understanding this is realizing that your marriage is not a fairy tale or a tragic flaw. It is a classroom. The purpose of the relationship is to exhaust the debt and perfect the Dhamma, the path of truth, within that interaction. The true meaning of soulmate, the unfinished business. We often romanticize the term soulmate as someone who completes us. The karmic perspective reframes this entirely. A soulmate is not the person who completes you, but the person who arrives with the necessary circumstances, the perfect combination of joy and friction to propel your spiritual growth. They are the mirror reflecting your own unfinished business. If you struggle with impatience, your partner may embody a quality that constantly challenges your control. If you struggle with self-worth, your partner might bring challenges that force you to find value internally. The key teaching here is about responsibility, as articulated by the Buddha in the Anguttara Nikaya. By the nature of their actions, beings are heirs to their actions. They are related to their actions, supported by their actions, and actions are their refuge. Anguttara Nikaya the 5th, 57. This means that the quality of your marriage today is directly related to the seeds planted yesterday, not just in a past life, but in the previous moments of this life. By understanding the principle of karma, we stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is the lesson this moment is offering me?" This shift in perspective turns a random relationship into a profound spiritual partnership. The inescapable dance, suffering as the teacher. If our marriage is a karmic appointment, it means every difficult moment, the arguments, the misunderstandings, the times we feel deeply unseen, are simply the ripening fruits of old, unskillful actions, akusala karma. No one enters a marriage seeking pain, yet pain inevitably arrives. It is the friction necessary to polish the two souls bound together. Crucially, the Buddhist perspective teaches that the past karma dictates the encounter, but the present action determines the outcome. We are not passive victims of destiny. We hold the powerful capacity for satana intention, volition, which is the moral force defining our present karma. We cannot control the vipaka, the fruit, event of the past, but we are absolutely responsible for our reaction to it. When friction arises with our spouse, the old pattern is to react with dvesha, aversion, anger, or raga, craving for things to be different. This reaction simply replants the unskillful seed, ensuring the conflict will repeat, perhaps in the next hour or the next lifetime. The spiritual practice in marriage is to recognize the arising of vipaka and choose a new, skillful response rooted in metta, loving kindness, and khanti patience. From karmic debt to intentional vow, adhitan. The true beauty of a spiritual partnership lies in the transformation from a debt relationship to an intentional vow relationship. A karmic debt means we are forced to be together to settle the ledger. An adhitthana aspiration, or vow, means we choose to be together to grow. The marriage vow, when viewed through the lens of Dharma, is not merely a legal or social contract. It is a profound, shared spiritual aspiration, a promise to use the inevitable difficulties of the union as the very material for awakening. It's a mutual vow to look beyond the temporary personality anatta of the other and see the Buddha nature, the potential for purity within them. The moment a couple consciously agrees that their primary purpose is to help each other achieve liberation, their relationship ceases to be merely personal and becomes a sangha, a sacred community of practice. This active choice stops the recycling of negative karma. We move from being determined by the past to being defined by the future aspiration. The practice of patience and compassion, khanti and karuna. The greatest spiritual gifts we exchange in marriage are patience and compassion and karuna. Patience is the ability to bear difficulties without resentment. When a spouse displays a difficult trait, our first instinct is judgment. Khanti allows us to pause and reflect. This difficulty is the ripened fruit of a past cause. My job is not to punish it, but to meet it with awareness. Compassion extends this practice. When we see our spouse suffering, whether from an external hardship or from their own unskillful mind, we extend the same deep, non-judgmental concern that we would to any suffering being. We realize their flaws are their own dukkha, and by meeting that flaw with karuna, we help both them and ourselves break the cycle. This practice echoes the profound teaching on patience, often found in texts like the Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. There is no evil equal to hatred, and no spiritual discipline equal to patience. One who is driven by hatred and vengeance will find neither peace nor happiness. Adapted from Shantideva. In marriage, the crucible of daily life provides infinite opportunities to practice this patience. By choosing to respond with gentleness instead of judgment, we consciously sow seeds of skillful karma, kusala kama, ensuring that the future fruits of our relationship will be peace and mutual awakening. The encounter was destiny, but the transformation is a conscious, loving choice. The great illusion. Clinging to a fixed person. One of the greatest sources of suffering in marriage is the refusal to accept the truth of anicca, impermanence, and anatta, non-self. When we marry, we create a mental image of our spouse, their personality, their appearance, their promises, and we cling to this fixed identity. When our spouse changes, as all conditioned phenomena must, we suffer intensely. We complain, "You're not the person I married." The profound wisdom of anicca teaches us that nothing stays the same, not even for a moment. Our spouse's body is changing, their moods are shifting, their views are evolving, and so are ours. The belief that there is a static, separate self in our partner or ourselves to grasp onto is the root of the pain. The person we married years ago does not exist today. Today, We are married to a new person, constantly being remade by new karma and new experiences. The practice here is continuous renewal of the relationship, asking, who is this changing being before me today, and how can I meet them with fresh, unbiased awareness? This releases us from the prison of past expectations and allows us to love the person who is rather than the person who was or should be. The mirror of anatta, seeing yourself in the other plug. The doctrine of anatta, non-self, is particularly challenging, yet essential, in close relationships. If there is no fixed independent self, then the boundary between me and you in the marriage is highly permeable. When we argue fiercely with our spouse, we are often fighting a reflection of our own insecurity, fear, or unacknowledged shadow. Your partner is the most powerful mirror the universe holds up to you. The very qualities in them that irritate you the most are usually the qualities that you deny or suppress in yourself. The intense reaction they trigger is not about their action. It's about your own vasanas, habitual tendencies, being activated. When facing friction, instead of focusing outwards and assigning blame, the spiritual practice is to turn the mirror inward. What part of my suffering in this moment is my own responsibility? This radical honesty is the ultimate act of self-mastery within the marriage. It shifts the dynamic from a battle of egos to a shared practice of mutual awakening. We realize that we are using the relationship to work out our own karma, and our spouse is simply the instrument of that healing. Cultivating deep equanimity, upekkha, the culmination of practicing khanti and accepting anicca and anatta, is the cultivation of upekkha, equanimity, or balanced mind. Equanimity in marriage does not mean indifference. It means having a steady, balanced heart that remains peaceful regardless of the external fluctuations of the relationship, the highs of joy and the lows of conflict. We realize that we cannot control our spouse's actions, emotions, or karma. Our sole responsibility is the purity of our own response. Upekkha allows us to offer loving support without attachment to the outcome. We love deeply, but we do not grasp fiercely. This profound balance is described in the classic Buddhist teachings on the four immeasurables, Brahmaviharas. May all beings be free from attachment and aversion. May they remain in equanimity. From the traditional Metta Sutta, Brahmavihara practice. Applying this to marriage means wishing your spouse well and supporting their journey, but accepting their freedom to follow their own karma, even if that path is temporarily difficult for you. This detachment, paradoxically, is what creates the deepest, most secure form of love. A love that honors the other person's inherent right to their own journey and growth. By letting go of control, we gift ourselves and our partner true spiritual freedom. Beyond dualism, two paths, one destination. By embracing the karmic nature of marriage, we move beyond the superficial dualism of good partner versus bad partner. We recognize our spouse as the unique, perfectly tailored catalyst for our own spiritual purification. The ultimate goal of this shared journey is not mere happiness, which, being anicca, is temporary. but vimutti, liberation, freedom. True freedom in marriage is the freedom from the compulsive need for the other person to be different and the freedom to love unconditionally, knowing that our own well-being is anchored internally in the citta. The two paths of the husband and wife are distinct, yet they spiral toward the same single destination, the exhaustion of suffering and the realization of the unconditioned. The relationship itself becomes a living demonstration of the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, paticcasamuppada. Our actions cause their reactions, which cause our subsequent actions, forming a complex chain of interdependence. By skillfully intervening in this chain with mindfulness and wisdom, we purify the entire flow of the relationship. Practical Dharma practices for the home Sangha. To sustain this awakened perspective, the home Sangha must adopt specific, simple Dharma practices. These practices transform the house from merely a residence into a training ground for liberation. Shared metta practice. Dedicate 5 minutes each morning to silently generate metta loving kindness for your spouse, consciously wishing them well-being and freedom from suffering, especially targeting areas where friction usually arises. This practice preemptively softens the heart. Mindful communication. Before speaking during conflict, observe the satana. Intention. Is the intention to blame or to understand? Commit to speaking only when the intention is rooted in compassion and truth, embodying the spirit of right speech, samavata. The gratitude pause. Regularly pause to reflect on the debt of affection your partner has repaid. Remember the moments of sacrifice and support, recognizing that the joy in the relationship is also a karmic fruit of your past generosity. This balances the tendency to focus only on the grievance. Shared silence. Commit to short periods of shared, comfortable silence, perhaps before bed or during a meal. This practice subtly reinforces the inner refuge and the clarity of the citta, showing that the bond is deeper than conversation or activity. The Buddha's teachings provide a clear roadmap for creating a harmonious household, ensuring that the external structures support the inner path. As the Sigalovada Sutta outlines, the duties of the layperson, including spouses, are based on respect, honor, and mutual welfare. The legacy of love, sowing seeds for future lives. Finally, recognizing that the relationship is karmic is a call to conscious, future-oriented action. Everything we do today, the patience we show, the anger we restrain, the kindness we offer, is the seed of the next encounter, the next life. The greatest legacy a couple can leave is not material wealth, but a reservoir of skillful karma that ensures their future connection, if any, is one of purely mutual benefit and shared awakening. By resolving old grievances with wisdom and sowing new seeds of metta, they are actively creating a path towards a higher realm or even the final release from the cycle of rebirth, samsara. The deepest truth of the karmic bond is that the encounter, seemingly random, was designed with flawless precision to deliver the exact curriculum needed for both souls. Once the lessons of anicca, dukkha, and anatta have been absorbed through the crucible of commitment, the final fruit is not just love, but the shared experience of nibbana nirvana, the liberation from suffering, right here in the daily dance of marriage. We have traveled through the deep currents of karma and realized that the person sleeping next to you is not a coincidence, but a mirror reflecting your soul's unfinished business. The highest purpose of your marriage is not to find bliss, but to create a shared path to liberation. By meeting the inevitable friction with metta, loving kindness, and khanti, patience, you transform old karmic debt into the fuel for future awakening. Embrace this profound truth. Every interaction is a chance to sow seeds of peace. Your greatest love story is ultimately a story of shared spiritual freedom.